Hello and welcome once again to another fantastic episode of Main Game. We cover the latest news and most current games of the year and even yesteryear just for you fellow viewers. With me, of course, Kakuchopurei esports writer, Luis Lacombe. How's it going, Luis?
Everything's doing good. I'm doing well, but let me answer your question with a question of my own. Do you know what time it is?
I don't know, Luis. What time is it?
It's game time, of course. This episode's a little unique because we'll be focusing on another part of the Malaysian video game industry, an extensive look at this year's top games.
All righty, I'm excited, Luis. I'm sure everyone is excited as well. So let's not waste our time and jump onto our first segment of the day, which is Lowdown. All right, so in this section, we will be talking a bit about the Malaysian video game scene. We previously had that, Double 11 Malaysia episode, and I cannot believe that I forgot to ask you this, Luis, okay? So is there any particular games you like that are made in Malaysia?
Yeah, of course there are. There's obviously No Straight Roads, but from Metronomic, an action-adventure game which has a rhythm-based twist to it. There's obviously No Straight Roads as well, Fires at Midnight, which is a pretty intense visual novel, which is filled with terrible people, but is just so captivating that you just want to keep on reading and find out what happens to their lives at the end. I also enjoy Cabaret, a dark, spooky vibe, because of its dark, spooky vibe and its narrative that touches on death, existentialism, racism, and corruption.
It's funny, actually, Luis, that you brought up Fires at Midnight and Cabaret, because we managed to get some words from the co-founder of the game, and for the company who made those games, okay? Persona Theory Games. So she happens to be one of the important figures in today's blog, Female Game Developers in Malaysia. Is it a tougher journey?
For decades, the gaming industry has been known as a predominantly male-dominated field. Over the recent years, however, women have been breaking barriers, making significant contributions and carving out their space in the industry, especially in game development. Malaysia has seen a rise in the number of women pursuing careers in gaming, thanks to the increased awareness and opportunities in the field. Women developers have been actively involved in various aspects of game development, including programming, art and design, storytelling, audio engineering, and quality assurance. Their skills and creativity have played a crucial role in the development of both local and international game titles.
Hi, my name is Sophie Aslan and I'm a game developer from Malaysia. Not only that, I'm also a game producer, game lecturer, game journalist, and also I was inducted into the Game Awards Future Class 2022 cohort last year.
Hi, my name is Sakina Latif. I'm from Persona Theory Games. I'm one of the co-founders and managing director of the game studio. We're based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Our main focus is telling Southeast Asian stories through games.
These trailblazing women have not only made their mark as individuals, but have also been advocates for greater diversity and representation in games. However, the competitive nature of the gaming industry has also posed additional challenges for women. They may face skepticism or dismissive attitudes, requiring them to prove themselves constantly and overcome gender-based prejudice.
In this day and age, I think that there's still a level of difficulty towards it lah. But I have heard stories in the past of my female colleagues being passed over purely because the higher ups feel like, oh, a woman cannot do this, she'll be too emotional, she cannot be factual about the matter. And then sometimes as a woman, the other side of things is that you only get put in these kinds of support positions because they feel like your so-called feminine touch, you're the one who will be the most capable at this job. So it's kind of like we don't really have the middle ground of that yet. It's either people believe that you're only good at it or people refuse to think that you can do it in the first place.
Hiring practices and workplace environments may be influenced by unconscious biases that favor male candidates or perpetuate a boys' club culture. This can lead to limited job opportunities, unequal pay, and the lack of recognition for women's contribution.
Malaysia as a whole still has a long way to go when it comes to hiring more women in games, especially because I only know a handful. And every time I run workshops or mentorship events and I have to look for women to be mentors or to speak at events, it's always very difficult for me to find the right people to be mentors. It was a sudden realization that there's not many in the industry in Malaysia right now, but it only means that there's opportunities to hire juniors. Like bigger studios, especially in Malaysia, should hire more women so we can scale up. So by the time there's events, opportunities to talk to mentor next generations of game designers and game producers, there'll be women to have opportunities to like mentor other girls in the industry. I think we are taking the steps into the right direction right now.
We need to have more women in positions where they can hire other people. We need to have more women in the positions of power that they can be the ones to say like, no, this person factually, objectively can do the job. It so happens that she's also a woman. Nah? At the moment, we don't have that many companies where they are run by women or have women on the board to make those kinds of decisions. So if there's any changes I would make in the immediate future, it would be to have more women in those positions of power.
And lastly, here's the advice both Sakina and Sophie have given on how to enter this line of work.
As a designer, you're kind of like creating worlds, you're telling stories, you're crafting these ideas. So it's not always going to be based off your own experiences, but that can make it more believable, more lived in, and something that people would enjoy. So if you can observe these kinds of things from other forms of media, other people and experiences, and figure out how to adapt it into whatever you're trying to do, that will instantly improve your abilities as a game designer.
A producer, you have to like people. Like you have to be able to pull people together and gather your team. If there's a problem, whether or not your team members is facing a work problem or any other issues, you have to be able to like flag it down and solve the problem quite fast. If not, it's going to hinder a lot of the production issues. If you don't notice the producer and you know the game, that means the producer is doing a really good job.
I love that, That was a great slew of interviews with two of Malaysia's top female game developers. So, Luis, speaking of female game developers, are there any other Malaysian-made games you would recommend for our viewers who would, taste something local?
Well, apart from Fires at Midnight and Cabaret, I would probably have to say Gigabash. Gigabash is a 3D fighting game with giant monsters from Japanese tokusatsu films. So we're talking creatures like Godzilla, heroes like Ultraman fighting against one another. In fact, Gigabash actually has ties to Toei Company so that they can include monsters like Godzilla, Destroyer, Gigan, and Mechagodzilla.
Ooh, okay. Giant monsters movies. Which particular monsters, or kaiju is your favorite?
I would probably have to say Godzilla, just because of just how iconic it is. As a brand and throughout the many decades of iterations of Godzilla films that there have been, there's a reason for why Godzilla has lasted this long as a brand. So, it's hard to say no to Godzilla.
All right, okay. As much as I would like to take a kaiju-sized break, we still have a lot of awesome gaming features to present and talk over. So how about we cut to these messages and we'll be right back. In the video game world, we're all used to, game publishers hyping up announced titles, but what happens when an early release of 2023 takes the world by storm? Here's a deeper look at Tango Gameworks' surprise hit game, Hi-Fi Rush.
In a video game landscape filled with high-budget / heavily marketed experiences and overrated sequels, one mid-sized title stood out among the rest. The action game Hi-Fi Rush, made by Tango Gameworks. Hi-Fi Rush features a lovely Saturday morning cartoon vibe from the late 80s and early 90s, lovable cast members named after food and drinks, but most importantly, exhilarating combat mixed in with rhythm game mechanics, fun boss battles, and great music. Imagine a character action title like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, but you attack and parry to the beat of a Nine Inch Nails or Prodigy song for max effectiveness and points. This early year released title was announced out of the blue on an Xbox presentation and was made available right after the show. It was a lovely surprise for many. Game director John Johannes said that the journey to getting Hi-Fi Rush made was tough, but he and his team persevered.
I had been working at Tango at that point from 2010 to 2017, so about 7 years of experience. I just finished directing The Evil Within 2. I got asked to sort of pitch an idea for an additional project. We were already sort of working on our next project, Ghostwire Tokyo, and I had this idea for something that was very different than we'd done before, which was, up until that point, horror games. And I had this idea for a very colorful and fun action game, but everything was synchronized to the music. I just liked the idea, but I wasn't sure about how to actually make it work as a game. But by the time I finished directing Evil Within, I feel like I had a better understanding of game development as a whole, where it wasn't just a good idea and I don't know how to make it. It was more of, I have this idea and this is how I think it can be done. So a more sort of experience-based approach. And so I pitched the idea, and it was very different than we've done before. Is it going to be okay? Is it going to work? And I was able to get the opportunity to prototype the idea. And we spent 1 year, which is myself and a programmer, mainly working on the core fundamentals of the game, which is, you're going to attack enemies to a music track, and everything will synchronize to the music. And we spent basically a year just getting that simple concept down. And then once we did that, it was interesting because it was something that had no art in it. It was very, we call gray box, which is just, it's like, looks like cubes as a stage instead of, the interesting visuals that you see in a finished product. But the mechanics were there. So it was fun to play even with no visual element. But we got the go ahead to go even further and to go into full production. And that's when we started to add on elements of, the visual aspect of the game and stretch out the concept with the story elements and the characters. But the core fundamentals were there, so that was very helpful it's basically taking what we had and expanding on it.
From the director's standpoint, there's a lot at stake when it comes to making a still new concept that fuses two unlikely genres together, creating an all-new experience. One full of colors and reminiscent of great 2000s era PlayStation 2 titles with boundless creativity.
What was good about this project was it was very personal to me. So I was able to have a very strong idea about what I wanted to do and guide the team with very specific sort of orders so that they wouldn't sort of go off in strange directions and compromise maybe the image of what the final package would be. But at the same time, no matter how small a game is, there's a million details that you have to micromanage to make sure that it becomes a complete package that feels complete. There's a lot of questions and there's a lot of problems, very small, sometimes very big, that need to be solved all the time. But the good part is when it all comes together at the end, you get to be very proud of what you've done. Luckily, in our case, we've had a great reaction from the audience and the players who've played it. So that just sort of bolsters your confidence going on to the next projects. Not just me, but the team as well.
Hi-Fi Rush is available right now for PC and Xbox consoles, and also on Xbox Game Pass for free. The most recent update for the game features two new challenge modes called BPM Rush and Tower Up Power Up, both heavily combat focused and feature funky twists to the formula.
Now that looks super fun. Okay, so Luis, you played the game. Share with us, how is it?
Well, I found it really fun, and that's coming from somebody who has no real sense of rhythm. I'm usually not the biggest fan of rhythm games, but Hi-Fi Rush somehow manages to draw me in with its unique take and blending of genres.
Okay, so do I have to be an expert in music, music games to, beat Hi-Fi Rush?
Not necessarily, because the game has various difficulty levels and tools to help you out. For example, there are different aspects like an in-game metronome, which, you can see the timing of when to hit the beat on screen, which I turned on straight away. You can also play the game on the lowest difficulty setting, which, once you start getting the hang of it, then, you can bump it up if you're feeling confident.
All right, rock on. Now, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after we take a chai break with some cinnamon on the side. Okay, I'm sure all of you would agree if I say we all need heroes to look up to, role models we can aspire to become. Video games have those too, okay, especially for female players and lovers of the hobby. So, Louise, what do you think about female heroes? Is it designed only for, female player or open to man player as well?
I'm sure back in the day, yes, I think that video games definitely did cater towards more of a male demographic, but as time has gone on and as more and more women have decided to pick up video games as a hobby, we saw an increase of female leads as well. So with time, yes, it's definitely become a lot more inclusive of all genders.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Louise. So here is a feature on our favorite female heroes in gaming.
Are video games a male-dominated hobby? That may have been true way back when. But we're now in an age where both genders have been active with the pastime, be it for fun or competitively. In terms of heroes to look up to, there are just as many memorable female leads as there are male ones. One of them started the influx of prominent female main characters, Samus of Metroid fame, a Nintendo-made 2D franchise set in a creepy sci-fi planet, where you eventually arm yourself to the teeth with plasma attacks and awesome space abilities. Samus is what you want out of a strong female lead, takes action, has a cool backstory, and has awesome power-ups associated with her and her plethora of power suits. She isn't the first prominent female lead though. Many others made their appearance before Metroid's debut on the 6th of August 1986. Like Miss Pac-Man, who is basically Pac-Man but with a bow tie. Okay, not the best example. Okay, how about Reika from Time Gal, who stars in the first ever anime Laserdisc arcade game and introduced us to Chibi Defs. Typhoon Gal, the first female fighting game protagonist, way before Street Fighter's Chun-Li and Fatal Fury's Mai Shiranui. And how could we forget about Athena from SNK, whose self-titled action game came out in July of 1986, months before Samus ever showed up. Regardless, gaming had a substantially strong showing of female lead characters, even before Samus and before Tomb Raider's Lara Croft. Speaking of whom, we have to highlight the importance of Tomb Raider's Lara Croft, who not only was an iconic female lead character in a pretty awesome video game series, except for Angel of Darkness, but was also a strong role model for real-life female gamers to pursue the hobby beyond just that, a hobby. And the leads just keep on coming post Lara Croft, like half of the Mass Effect cast, the Resident Evil ladies, Chell from Portal, Final Fantasies Terra, Celeste, and Yuna, and many, many more. It's all dependent on the writers and developers behind these fine games on how they are portrayed. However, let us not forget the real-life female game developers, programmers, artists, voice actors, and creators for their massive contributions to the industry. These are but a few.
All right, that's a lot of video game female leads, not in the games themselves, but also behind the scenes. So, Louise, do you have a personal favorite heroine?
I would probably have to go with Samus. Although I didn't grow up playing the Metroid games, the very first game I ever played was actually Super Smash Bros. Melee, which has a bunch of Nintendo characters, and one of them was Samus. Growing up, I exclusively played Samus. Since then, I've gone on to learn the backstory and in-game lore behind the Metroid franchise, and now I can safely say that Samus is my favorite.
Okay.
But I do have a question for you, though. Do you have any favorite female leads?
Okay. So as for me, actually, I'll have to go with Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. I know it's a safe choice, but she has gone through so many iterations. She's just iconic with the ponytail and the twin guns. And all of her adventures take place in interesting locations. So ones with the dinosaurs to boot.
I mean, yeah, the good old days where you could just have dinosaurs in games for absolutely no reason at all.
All right, okay, we're not as instinct as those creatures. However, our time is, up for this episode. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Aoife.
And I'm Lewis.
And we hope that you level up hard to become the heroes you strive to be, female or otherwise. Goodbye.